She was not merely rejected. She was humiliated before all the packs of the kingdom by the very Alpha King the moon had chosen. Wounded and alone, she was found collapsed on the banks of a stream by another king. And when she returned to the same place at the side of a different Alpha King, the mate who had rejected her felt the bond scream the moment he saw her. Zoya never imagined that the most important moment of her life would happen while she was trying to become invisible. The grand annual gathering was always like this. Hundreds of wolves from every pack in the kingdom of Shadowmoor gathered in the vast stone hall of the main castle. Celebrating alliances. Displaying power. Strengthening bonds. For the alphas and their families, it was an opportunity to show strength and status. The Borderlands pack did not come for honor. It came out of obligation. And Zoya was pressed against the cold stone wall in the darkest corners of the hall, wearing the only dress she owned, a piece of faded linen, patched in several places. The sleeves were worn at the cuffs, the hem uneven where she herself had mended a tear months earlier. It did not belong there, in a place filled with silks and velvets, jewels and crowns. But it was all she had. Zoya kept her eyes lowered, her dark curly hair falling over her face in an attempt to hide her heterochromatic eyes. Those damned eyes that made people stare, whisper, step away. One golden like warm amber, the other silver like polished metal. Different. Strange. Wrong. She had learned early on that it was better not to be seen. But then, it happened. It was as if a bolt of pure energy tore through the hall and struck her square in the chest. Zoya gasped, her hand flying to her heart as an overwhelming sensation exploded inside her. It was not pain. It was power. It was connection. It was something so intense, so absolute, that it made her knees weaken. Her inner wolf woke with a roar. Mate. The word echoed through every fiber of her being. Undeniable. And sacred. Zoya lifted her head sharply, her eyes searching frantically through the crowd, following that magnetic pull that dragged her with irresistible force in one specific direction. And then, she saw him. Vorian was in the middle of a conversation with the alpha of a neighboring pack when he felt it. It was not subtle. It was not gentle. It was like being struck by lightning that started in his chest and spread through every nerve, every muscle, every damned cell in his body. His wolf, normally controlled, restrained, obedient, exploded into absolute frenzy. Mate. Now. Find. Vorian went completely still, the conversation dying on his lips. His heart slammed in his chest, pumping hot blood through his veins with primal urgency. He could feel the bond forming. Could feel that golden, inevitable connection solidifying like invisible chains binding his soul to whom? No. Some rational part of his mind whispered, alarmed. Not here. Not now. Not in front of everyone. But it was already too late. His dark eyes moved on their own, scanning the crowded hall, searching for the source of that devastating pull. And then he saw her. In the corners. In the shadows where wolves from insignificant packs stood. A she-wolf. The bond sang between them, warm and inevitable. And Vorian felt something he had never in all of his 28 years experienced. Wholeness. As if a part of him that had always been missing had finally been found. No. Vorian forced his feet to move before his brain could process what he was doing. He stepped down from the platform, the crowd parting automatically before him, and walked toward the she-wolf. With every step, the bond pulsed stronger. His wolf pushed, demanded that he run, that he reach her, that he claim her. Mine. Mine. But then Vorian came close enough to truly see her. And everything inside him froze. She looked wrong for the throne. The dress she wore was in tatters. She was barefoot in his hall. Her dark hair was a wild, unkempt mass of curls she clearly did not know how to control. Her posture was hunched, drawn inward like someone who had spent her entire life trying not to be noticed. And then she lifted her head. And Vorian saw her eyes. One gold, the other silver. Heterochromia. Cursed. His mind supplied automatically. Marked. Different. Something twisted in Vorian's stomach. No. No. This could not be happening. He was the Alpha King of Shadowmoor. He needed a Luna who was strong, powerful, of noble lineage. Someone he could present to the other packs with pride. Someone who would bring honor and respect to his name. Not this. But the bond did not care about appearances. It did not care about social status. It pulsed between them, warm and insistent, telling Vorian that she was his. That she belonged to him. That he needed to protect her, claim her, love her. Love her? Vorian almost laughed at the thought. Love someone who could barely dress herself properly? He looked at her again, really looked, trying to find something, anything, that justified that bond. But all he saw were flaws. Pale skin marked by small scars. Thin, fragile shoulders. The expression on her face that was part hope, part terror. And those damn mismatched eyes that made her something people would point at, whisper about, judge. You cannot do this, a cold, calculating voice whispered in his mind. Think of the kingdom. Think of your position. You have responsibilities. You have an image to maintain. But his wolf roared in protest. She is ours. It does not matter. She is ours. The internal war tore through Vorian, brutal and swift. Part of him, the primitive, instinctive part, wanted to pull her into his arms, rub his scent over her, declare before everyone that she belonged to him. But the rational part, the part that had been trained since childhood to lead, to rule, to always put the kingdom above everything else, that part knew what had to be done. Vorian made his decision. And he hated that it hurt. You, Vorian said, and his voice came out colder than he intended. The she-wolf blinked, confusion and hope battling across her face. Vorian let his gaze sweep over her slowly, deliberately, assessing every detail so that everyone around could see the tattered dress, the bare feet, the unruly hair, those cursed eyes. Do this quickly, he ordered himself. Like pulling out a thorn. Fast and final. This must be some kind of mistake, he said, loud enough for every wolf in the hall to hear. The gods could not have given me, you, as a mate. He saw the moment the words hit her. Saw the hope in her eyes falter. Good. It was better this way. Better to end any illusion now. I felt the bond, Zoya whispered, her voice trembling but trying to be steady. You felt it too. I know you did. And he had. He still did. The bond pulsed between them, warm and insistent, begging to be accepted. But Vorian forced his expression to remain cold. Feeling does not mean accepting, he replied, choosing each word to cut. Look at you. He took a step back, creating physical distance, and felt the bond protest. His wolf clawed furiously beneath his skin, demanding that he stop. That he not do this. Be quiet, Vorian ordered his wolf internally. This is necessary. Look at what you are wearing, he continued, keeping his voice steady even as something inside him twisted. Rags. You do not even wear shoes. His eyes traveled over her again, forcing himself to catalog every imperfection out loud. You are strange. Those ridiculous, uneven eyes that mark you as cursed. He paused, seeing her flinch. Stop. Something inside him begged. You are destroying her. But Vorian did not stop. Did you really think that I, the Alpha King of Shadowmoor, would accept someone like you at my side? Around them, whispers erupted like spreading fire. She is from the Borderlands pack. That poor pack with no importance at all. And those eyes, they always say they are a bad omen. The Alpha King is right to reject her. He could see tears forming in her eyes, even as she fought not to let them fall. And something inside Vorian broke at the sight. You are a monster, a voice whispered. I am a king, he replied coldly. And kings make difficult choices. The bond is sacred, Zoya whispered, her voice breaking. The gods chose. The gods were wrong, Vorian cut her off, forcing absolute certainty into his voice. Even as his wolf screamed in agony, he saw the blonde she-wolf of noble lineage he had been courting, who would be a suitable Luna, approach and possessively take his arm. Perfect. Let everyone see. Let everyone know he had better options. I need a Luna who is worthy of ruling at my side, Vorian continued, each word coming easier now that he had begun. Someone strong, beautiful, of noble blood. Someone who brings honor to my name. He looked directly into Zoya's mismatched eyes, forcing himself to keep his expression hard. You bring nothing but shame. He saw the moment the words finally broke her. Saw the last spark of hope die in her eyes. And he hated himself for feeling relief. Vorian. Zoya tried again, desperation in her voice. No. Please, the bond. There is no we, he said with brutal finality. Finish this, Vorian ordered himself. Finish it now before you change your mind. In Shadowmoor, a king could only reject a bond before witnesses. It was the only way to make it irreversible. So he turned to the gathered crowd, his voice rising so that every wolf in the hall could hear. This would be the official declaration. Irreversible. I, Vorian, Alpha King, reject you, Zoya of the Borderlands Pack, as my mate. The bond screamed in protest. Vorian felt something twist in his chest, hot and painful. Ignore it, he ordered himself. It is just the bond protesting. It will pass. You are not worthy to stand at my side, he continued. Each word making the rejection more real, more permanent. I renounce the bond. And then, it happened. The pain came like a wave of liquid fire tearing through Vorian's chest. He clenched his jaw hard, the muscles of his neck tensing, his hands curling into fists so tight that his nails cut into his palms. But he did not scream. He did not bend. He did not show weakness. Kings did not show weakness. The agony was devastating, as if something vital were being ripped from inside him. Burning. Cutting. Destroying. His wolf howled in pure agony, clawing, begging him to stop, to fix this. But Vorian kept his expression cold and controlled, even as he felt cold sweat slide down his temple, even as every fiber of his being screamed in protest. Zoya, however, did not have the same control. She screamed. The sound tore through the silence of the hall, wild, animal, devastating. Her knees slammed into the stone floor with force, and she folded in on herself, her hands pressed against her chest. Vorian watched her suffer, and forced himself not to move, forced himself to remain impassive as she shattered on the floor before him. Tears streamed down Zoya's face now, sobs shaking her fragile body. The pain of the broken bond was destroying her from the inside out. And Vorian remained standing there, watching. Because if he moved, if he gave in for even a single second, he knew he would fall apart. That he would pull her into his arms. That he would beg for forgiveness. That he would accept the bond regardless of the consequences. So he did not move. Around him, some wolves laughed. Others whispered. Many simply watched with morbid fascination. Take her out of here, Vorian said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. She's making a pathetic scene. An elderly she-wolf approached hesitantly and helped Zoya to her feet. The rejected she-wolf could barely stand, her body shaking violently as the pain kept tearing through her. For a moment, only a moment, Zoya's eyes met Vorian's. And what he saw there haunted him. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was betrayal. Absolute pain. And something that looked dangerously close to surrender. As if something fundamental inside her had been permanently broken. Then the elderly she-wolf dragged her out of the hall, and Zoya disappeared. The heavy silence lingered for a few seconds before someone, one of the oldest alphas, grunted in approval. A wise decision, Alpha King, he said. A leader must always put the kingdom above personal feelings. Others murmured in agreement. She would never have been suitable. Vorian did not answer. He only nodded stiffly. Inside, the pain of the severed bond kept throbbing. Not as devastating as what Zoya had felt, but present. Constant. A wound he knew would never heal. But he was strong. He was the Alpha King. He would endure. Outside, Zoya collapsed against the stone wall, sliding down to the ground. The physical pain was beginning to fade into a dull, constant agony. But the emotional pain, that only grew. The shame burned hotter than any wound. He looked at me and decided I was worth nothing. He cataloged every one of my flaws out loud so everyone could hear. He called me cursed. He said I bring shame. The words echoed in her mind, looping without end, each one cutting deeper than the last. The elderly she-wolf stayed there for a while, not knowing what to say. Eventually, she crouched beside Zoya. "I'm so sorry," the older she-wolf said, and it sounded genuine. "No one deserves what happened in there." But Zoya barely heard. The tears kept falling, soaking the already ruined dress. "What are you going to do?" the elder asked softly. Zoya wiped her face with the back of her hand, though it was useless. The tears kept coming. "I'm leaving," she whispered. "Leaving? Where to?" "I don't know." And it was the truth. "Anywhere far from here. Where no one knows. Where no one knows that I'm unworthy. That I'm strange. That I'm cursed. That not even my fated mate wanted me." The elder hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe that is for the best. A new beginning." "There is no new beginning," Zoya thought bitterly. "I will always be this. I will always be the she-wolf who wasn't good enough." Alone in the darkness, Zoya forced herself to stand. Every movement was agony. The broken bond pulsed like an open wound, raw and exposed. But she took a deep breath. Once. Twice. And stepped forward. Then another. And another. She did not look back. The forest swallowed her quickly. Tall pines blocked the moonlight, casting thick shadows that seemed to move and breathe. Zoya stumbled over twisted roots, her bare feet bleeding on sharp stones. The pain was unbearable, physical and emotional both tearing through her with every step. And then her body made the decision for her. The shift wasn't conscious. It wasn't planned. It was pure survival instinct. Zoya felt bones snapping and reforming, skin burning as fur pushed through, the world-changing perspective as she dropped to all fours. Normally, the shift was painful but quick. This time, with the severed bond still pulsing like an open wound in her soul, it was pure agony. But when it ended, she was in her wolf form. Small. Smaller than most she-wolves. Dark fur that blended into the forest shadows. And those eyes that stayed mismatched even in animal form. One golden, one silver. Shining in the darkness. "Run," her wolf ordered. "Survive." And she ran. Through the endless night. Zoya ran. Her paws were quicker than her human feet, but still injured. Bleeding where sharp rocks cut. She crossed icy streams that numbed her legs, climbed rocky slopes that tore at her pads, pushed through dense thickets where branches scraped her muzzle and flanks. But she kept going. She ran without direction, crossing boundaries she didn't even know existed, until the air changed. Colder. Cleaner. And the scent of the forest became different. When the sun finally rose, painting the sky pink and gold, Zoya was beyond exhausted. She saw a large tree ahead with twisted roots that created a small, sheltered space at the base. Her body ached so badly she could barely hold her wolf form. "Just a few minutes," she thought, staggering toward the tree. "I just need to rest for a few minutes." Zoya curled up between the roots, her muzzle tucked under her tail, her body trembling with exhaustion and pain. She closed her eyes, one golden, one silver, and let the darkness take her. Voices woke her. Zoya opened her eyes slowly, disoriented. How long had she slept? The sun was higher now, filtering through the leaves. "This way," a male voice was saying nearby. "Are you sure? I don't see any deer tracks." Another voice replied. "Hunters." Zoya's instinct screamed danger. She tried to stand, tried to run, but her body was too stiff, too sore. Before she could move, two men emerged between the trees. They stopped when they saw her. They were big, wearing worn leather and carrying bows. The first was older, with a thick gray-streaked beard. The second was younger, with a scar running across his cheek. "Well, look at that," the older one said, approaching cautiously. "A wolf. Too small to be an adult male. Must be a female." Zoya tried to growl a warning, but the sound that came out was weak, pathetic. Her body was too exhausted to even look threatening. "She looks injured," the younger one observed, keeping his distance. "Look at her paws. She's bleeding. She's alone, too." The older man frowned. "Strange. Wolves don't travel alone like that." Zoya managed to rise on trembling legs, backing up against the tree trunk. Every muscle protested. She just wanted them to leave. To leave her alone. "We could kill her," the younger one suggested. "The pelt is still worth something, even if she's small." "Maybe," the older one agreed. "Let's get closer. We don't want her to run." They took cautious steps toward Zoya. And that was when she made the fatal mistake. Exhausted, frightened, desperate, Zoya lifted her head and opened her eyes, looking straight at the men, hoping the gaze would make them hesitate. "Step back." But what happened was the opposite. Both men froze. Because they saw her eyes. One golden like the morning sun, the other silver like molten metal. Different. Uneven. The younger man took an abrupt step back, his hand flying up to make a protective sign against evil. "By the gods," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Her eyes. They're different." The older man went pale, but his expression quickly shifted from fear to something more dangerous. Anger mixed with cold determination. "Mismatched eyes," he said, spitting on the ground. "Cursed." Zoya tried to back away farther, but there was nowhere to go. Her back was already pressed to the tree. "No," the younger man said, his voice rising, hysterical. "No, we can't let something like that live. My grandmother told me, creatures with mismatched eyes bring misfortune. Death. Ruin." Zoya tried to growl again, tried to look dangerous, but she was too weak. All that came out was a low whine. "She's weak. Injured. She won't be able to hurt us." "Exactly," the older man agreed, advancing. "And can we risk letting a curse like that loose in the forest?" Zoya tried to run. Her paws moved, but they were too weak, too slow. She barely made it 3 steps before she stumbled and fell. The older man reached her first. His boot slammed into Zoya's side with brutal force, sending her rolling across the ground. Pain exploded through her already battered ribs. Zoya tried to get up, but the younger man was there, kicking her front legs. She heard something crack. Sharp pain ripping through her leg. "Cursed creature!" The older man snarled, kicking again. "You should have died at birth." Zoya whimpered, the sound loud and desperate. She tried to bite, tried to defend herself, but every movement only brought more pain. Another kick, this time to the head. Stars burst across Zoya's vision. The world spun. "Let's finish this quickly," the older man said, though his voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. "I don't want to be near this thing any longer than necessary." Zoya felt rough hands grab her, dragging her wolf body across the ground. She tried to fight, but she had no strength. Every breath was agony. The sound of running water grew louder. "A stream. Here," the older man said. "We'll leave her here." They threw her onto the bank of the stream. Zoya's body slammed against smooth stones, knocking the air from her lungs. She lay there, unable to move, watching through blurred eyes as the men came closer. The older man lifted his boot and stomped down with brutal force on Zoya's ribs. She heard and felt bone break. The pain was so intense she couldn't even whimper. "May the gods have mercy," the older man said, with no mercy in his voice. "And rid this world of one more curse." Another kick to the head, this time, and Zoya's world went out. The last thing she felt before the darkness took her was the cold water of the stream touching her fur. And a distant thought. Vorian was right. I was always cursed. Then, there was nothing. Her wolf body wanted to regenerate, but the rejection had broken the healing from the inside. Theron, Alpha King of Linares, with long golden hair, woke with a restlessness he couldn't name. It wasn't fear. It wasn't worry. It was something deeper, more instinctive. His wolf was unsettled, clawing under his skin, pushing him to go out. To patrol. He dressed quickly and left the castle, shifting into his wolf form as soon as he passed through the gates. His golden fur gleamed under the morning sun as he ran through the forest. Normally, he patrolled the kingdom's borders only once a week. But today something pulled at him. His senses were on high alert, ears pricked, nose catching every scent on the wind. And then, he smelled it. Blood. Fresh. Theron accelerated, powerful paws eating up the distance. The scent grew stronger as he neared the stream that marked the eastern boundary of his territory. And then he saw her. A she-wolf. Small, dark fur soaked with blood and water, motionless on the stream bank. Theron shifted back into human form as he ran to her, his heart pounding with something he didn't understand. He dropped to his knees beside the small she-wolf, his hands reaching out with the utmost care. Alive. She was still alive. Theron could see her breathing, so faint, so shallow he almost missed it. Blood stained the water around her. Bruises and beating marks covered her small body. One of her front legs sat at an unnatural angle, broken. Her ribs looked caved in on one side. Who did this? Cold rage filled Theron. Whoever had beaten the small, defenseless she-wolf to within an inch of death. He pushed the thought aside. First, he had to save her life. Then he would deal with whoever had done this. And then, as he adjusted her limp body in his arms, Theron saw. Her eyes opened for a fraction of a second, just a brief moment of awareness before they closed again. But Theron saw. One golden eye, the other silver. Different. Unique. His inner wolf roared, protect. Save. Theron held the small, injured she-wolf against his chest with infinite care, and began running back to the castle. Every step was measured, controlled, careful not to jostle her too much, not to cause more pain than she was already suffering. Her body was alarmingly light. Too light even for a small she-wolf. How long had she gone without eating? How much blood had she lost? Hold on, Theron thought fiercely. Just a little longer. You're safe now. Her dark fur was soaked, part stream water, part blood. Theron could feel her weak, uneven breathing against his chest. Could feel the faint tremor of her body even while unconscious. When he finally reached the castle, the guards at the gate straightened immediately when they saw him. Alpha King, one of them began, but stopped when he saw what Theron was carrying. Send for the healer, Theron ordered, his voice steady but urgent. Tell her it's an emergency. Prepare a room in the recovery wing. The guard did not hesitate. He turned and ran into the castle. Theron passed through the gates and climbed the wide stone steps. Servants fell back as he went by, eyes wide as they saw the bloodied she-wolf in their king's arms. The healer was already waiting when he reached the recovery wing. By Mother Moon, she whispered when she saw the she-wolf's condition. What happened? I found her near the eastern stream, Theron said, laying the she-wolf gently onto the clean bed that had been prepared. Beaten. Nearly dead. How long ago? Maybe half an hour. The blood was still fresh when I got there. The healer worked in silence for a few moments, her skilled fingers gently probing broken ribs, examining the fractured leg, cleaning the cut on the head. She was lucky you found her, the healer said at last, her voice grave. Another hour and she would have died of hypothermia or blood loss. Theron nodded. Can you save her? I can try. But it will be difficult. The ribs will need time to heal. And that leg. She paused. I'll need to set it back into place. It will hurt even if she's unconscious. And there is always a risk of infection. Do whatever is necessary, Theron said. I'll need space to work, she said gently but firmly. Can you wait outside? Theron hesitated. His wolf bristled at the idea of leaving her. All right, he agreed reluctantly. But call me when you're done. Yes, Alpha King. Theron left the room, but he didn't go far. He stayed in the corridor outside, leaning against the wall, waiting. Why does this matter so much? He asked himself. She is a stranger. A she-wolf you found injured. You've helped others before. But he had never felt this urgency. This need to protect. It's because she was so broken, he decided. So close to death. Anyone would feel compassion. But deep down, Theron knew it was more than that. Those eyes. One gold, one silver. Unique. Extraordinary. It was hours before the healer emerged from the room. Theron straightened at once. How is she? Alive, the healer said, and Theron felt relief flood through him. Stable for now. I cleaned the wounds, set the leg, wrapped the ribs. She's resting now. But it will take time. And she will need constant care for the first few weeks. See that she has everything she needs, Theron ordered. Theron, she said, using his name. Who is she? I don't know, he admitted. But I will find out when she wakes. 3 days passed. Theron had just entered the room for his morning visit when he sensed something different in the air. And then he saw. It was no longer a she-wolf lying on the bed. It was a woman. Theron stopped in the doorway. The shift must have happened during the night. The healer had mentioned it could occur, but seeing it was different than knowing. She was small, even in human form. Delicate. Dark, curly hair spilled across the white pillow like a shadowy cloud. Her skin was pale, bruised in ways that looked worse in human form, yellow-green around the wrapped ribs, purple along her arms. The healer had dressed her in a simple linen nightgown that covered her properly, but Theron could see the bandages through the thin fabric. He approached the bed slowly, almost reverently. And that was when he saw her face. Beautiful, was the first thought that crossed his mind. Not in the obvious, polished way so many women at court were. This was a subtler beauty. Delicate features, long dark lashes resting against pale cheeks, lips slightly parted as she breathed. And then her eyes opened. Theron went still. One eye golden as amber, the other silver as the moon. Extraordinary, Theron thought, unable to look away. She blinked slowly, disoriented, trying to understand where she was. And then her eyes, those magnificent, unique eyes, focused on him. Fear flashed across her face. She tried to scoot back, moaning when the movement pulled at her injured ribs. Don't move, Theron said quickly, keeping his voice gentle. You're hurt. She froze, studying him with obvious caution. Who? Her voice came out broken. Who are you? Theron picked up the cup of water from the bedside table and approached slowly, giving her time to protest if she wanted. My name is Theron, he said calmly. I am the Alpha King of Linares. And you are in my castle, in the recovery wing. He offered the water. She hesitated, then took it with trembling hands, drinking in small sips. How did I get here? I found you, Theron said. Near the stream on the eastern border of my territory. You were badly injured. He saw the memories return. Saw pain cross her face. Saw her eyes fill with tears that she blinked furiously away. The hunters, she whispered. They hurt you? She nodded slowly, not meeting his eyes. Theron felt cold anger solidify in his stomach. Why? She was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she lifted her gaze to meet his. And Theron saw it. Saw the shame there. The expectation of rejection. She's expecting me to react like they did, he realized. She thinks I'll see her as cursed. My eyes, she said at last, her voice so low he almost didn't hear it. They saw my eyes. And thought that I brought a curse. Theron held her gaze. Your eyes are not a curse, he said with absolute conviction. They are extraordinary. She blinked, startled. What? Extraordinary, Theron repeated. Unique. I have never seen anything like them. And they are definitely not a curse. Tears filled her eyes again. But this time, She didn't fight them. They simply slid silently down her face. You really believe that? Yes, Theron said without hesitation. I do. She made a small, broken sound, half sob, half breath. Theron wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know if it would be welcome. So he simply stayed there, present, letting her process. Eventually, she wiped her face with the back of her hand. Sorry, she murmured. You don't have to apologize. Silence settled for a moment. Do you have a name? Theron asked gently. She hesitated then. Zoya, Theron repeated. And he liked how it sounded. It's a beautiful name. She looked at him as if no one had ever said that before. Thank you, she whispered. For saving me. For bringing me here. For not. Her voice faltered. For not judging you for your eyes, Theron finished softly. She nodded. Zoya, you are safe here, Theron said firmly. No one will hurt you. No one will judge you. You have my word. And as he looked at that young woman, injured and broken, but still alive, still fighting, Theron made a silent promise to himself. He would help her heal. Not only physically, but also from the invisible wounds he could see so clearly in her extraordinary eyes. Days turned into weeks. Zoya recovered slowly. Theron visited her daily. At first, the visits were brief. He would simply check on how she was doing, bring fresh fruit or flowers from the garden, talk about simple, safe things. Zoya was cautious, quiet, as if she still expected him to change his mind, to decide she wasn't worth the effort. But Theron was patient. Little by little, she began to relax. She talked about everything except Shadowmoor. Never about what had happened before he found her. And Theron did not press. When the healer finally declared Zoya well enough to move freely around the castle, Theron made a proposal. Zoya, I want to make you an offer. She tensed slightly, but she didn't pull away. What kind of offer? Stay in Lunaris, Theron said. As part of the kingdom. I don't understand. You need a safe place to rebuild. And Theron paused, choosing his words carefully. I could use your help. With diplomatic matters, organization, planning. You're intelligent, observant. I've seen it in our conversations. You could be valuable here. Valuable? Zoya repeated the word as if it were foreign. Yes. Valuable. She studied him, looking for lies, looking for traps. But finding only sincerity. And in return? In return, I help you. I train you, if you want. Self-defense. Strategy. Anything you need so you never feel helpless again. Zoya was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. All right. I accept. Theron smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. And that was how Zoya's transformation began. Theron was a patient but demanding teacher. He started with basic defense. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Zoya grew stronger, faster, more confident. Theron taught her not only physical combat, but strategy. How to read people, how to anticipate moves, how to use her mind as much as her muscles. And Zoya learned. She also began helping Theron with matters of the kingdom, just as he had proposed. At first, they were simple tasks, organizing assemblies, speaking with the village. But as Theron saw her capability, he involved her more. Zoya had a natural talent for it. She saw patterns others missed, asked questions no one else thought to ask. You're good at this, he told her. Better than many advisors I've had. Zoya blushed at the compliment, but she didn't look away the way she would have months before. Thank you, she said, and her voice was steady. And as the months passed, something else changed. Zoya no longer walked hunched over. She no longer hid her face. She no longer avoided eye contact. She moved with confidence now. Head high, shoulders back. When someone looked at her heterochromatic eyes with curiosity, she looked back without shame. She had changed physically too. Recovery time, proper food, and constant training had transformed her body. She gained muscle, definition. Her skin held a healthy color. Her hair shone. But the greatest change was internal. Zoya knew her worth now. And Theron watched all of it with something he was beginning to recognize as more than simple mentor satisfaction. It was during a particularly intense training session that Theron finally admitted it to himself. They were practicing close combat. Zoya had managed to knock him off balance, something she had never done before. And now she stood over him, breathing hard, eyes bright with triumph. "I did it," she said, smiling. A genuine smile. Wide. Beautiful. And Theron looked at her, really looked, and felt something tighten in his chest. Oh, no, he thought. I'm falling in love with her. It wasn't a soulmate bond, Theron had never felt that, but this was something real. Something deep. He admired her strength, her resilience, her intelligence. He liked the way she challenged him intellectually, how she wasn't afraid to disagree when she thought he was wrong. He loved the sound of her laughter, rare at first, but more and more frequent as she began to feel safe. He loved the way her eyes lit up when she learned something new. One gold, one silver. Absolutely extraordinary. Theron? Zoya's voice pulled him back. Are you all right? He got to his feet, brushing dust from his clothes. I'm great, he said. And it was true. Because even if he was falling in love with her, even if it complicated everything, he didn't regret a single thing. Zoya was feeling something shift too. At first, Theron was simply the alpha who had saved her. Kind, yes. Respectful, yes. But distant. Safe. But as they spent more time together, that distance disappeared. She began to notice small things. The way his blue eyes brightened when he laughed. The way he tilted his head when he was thinking deeply. The way his long blonde hair fell into his face when he leaned over maps and documents. She noticed how he was gentle with everyone, servants, guards, advisors, not because he had to be, but because he cared. She noticed the way he looked at her. Not with pity, not with discomfort at her eyes, but with respect. Admiration. And something else. Something that made her stomach turn in a way she didn't understand. No, she told herself. Don't think like that. He is a king. You are only Zoya. But the voice was weaker now. Because she was no longer only Zoya. She was Zoya, Theron's advisor. Zoya, who could take down larger opponents in combat. Zoya, whose ideas were heard and valued. During a quiet night in the castle library, Zoya was reviewing a trade treaty when Theron came in carrying 2 glasses of wine. I thought you could use a break, he said, offering her a glass. Zoya took it with a smile. Thank you. Theron sat in the chair beside her, and for a while they simply drank in comfortable silence. Zoya, Theron said eventually. Can I ask you a question? Of course. Are you happy here? Zoya looked at him, surprised. Why do you ask? Because I want to be sure, Theron said, and there was genuine sincerity in his voice. That you're here because you want to be. Not because you feel you have to be. Zoya considered the question carefully. At first, she admitted, I didn't know what I felt. I was just surviving. But now. She paused, searching for the right words. Now. I can't imagine being anywhere else. Lunaris is. Her voice faltered for a moment. Lunaris is the first place that truly feels like home. And you? She stopped, realizing she was about to say too much. Me? Theron prompted gently. Zoya met his eyes. Those blue eyes that truly saw her. That had never judged her. That had always treated her with respect. You gave me something I never had before, she said softly. You taught me that I have value. She paused, her heart pounding hard. You taught me to see myself the way you see me. The silence that followed was charged. Theron looked at her with an intensity that made the air between them feel electrically alive. "And how do you think I see you?" he asked, his voice low. Zoya swallowed. As someone extraordinary." "Yes," Theron said, leaning a little closer. "Extraordinary. Strong. Intelligent. Brave." He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. "Beautiful." Zoya's heart stopped. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, pulling back. "I shouldn't have. That was inappropriate." Zoya stared at him, not knowing what to say. They looked at each other for a long moment, something unspoken hanging between them. But neither of them took the next step. The next day, Theron was in his office reviewing trade reports when a messenger knocked at the door, carrying a scroll sealed with Shadowmoor's crest, a black wolf howling beneath a crescent moon. He broke the seal and read, "Alpha King Theron of Lunaris. It is with great honor that I invite you to the Grand Royal Ball of Shadowmoor, to be held on the next full moon. It will be an occasion of celebration where I will finally present my chosen one as Luna beside the throne. Your presence would honor this kingdom and strengthen the bonds between our lands. Respectfully, Vorian, Alpha King of Shadowmoor." Theron reread the invitation 3 times, something twisting in his stomach. Shadowmoor. The kingdom Zoya had fled from. He had never pressed her for details. She would share when she was ready. But he knew something terrible had happened there. Something that had left her broken and bleeding on the border of his lands. Should I go? Theron wondered. Diplomatically, it made sense. Refusing would be an insult. But the idea of returning to that place, knowing what Zoya had suffered. He was still considering it when he heard a soft knock at the door. "Come in." Zoya entered carrying a stack of documents. She wore a simple but elegant dark blue linen dress that brought out her heterochromatic eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back into a practical ponytail, a few curls slipping free to frame her face. She was beautiful. But more than that, she was confident. Her posture was upright, her gaze direct, her smile small but genuine. There was no trace left of the hunched, frightened she-wolf he had found months ago. "I brought everything you asked for," she said, setting the documents on the desk. Then she noticed the scroll in his hand. "Bad news?" Theron hesitated. "An invitation. To a ball in Shadowmoor." He saw the moment the name of the kingdom hit her. Her posture grew slightly more rigid, her fingers curling into a fist without meaning to. But she didn't look away. She didn't shrink. "Shadowmoor," she repeated, her voice carefully neutral. "The Grand Royal Ball. You know about it?" "Everyone does," Zoya said. "It's where the Alpha King presents his chosen one officially. His future Luna." Something crossed her face, so fast Theron almost missed it. Pain. Anger. And then, determination. "Are you going?" she asked. "I was considering refusing," Theron admitted. "Given that, well, you came from there. And clearly something happened that hurt you. I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position." Zoya was silent for a long moment, staring at the invitation. Then her eyes lifted to his with fierce intensity. "I want to go." Theron blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Zoya said. And there was something in her voice he had never heard before. Something close to challenge. "I've spent months rebuilding myself. Becoming strong. Proving to myself that I have worth." She paused, lifting her chin. "It's time to show them too." Theron studied her for a long moment. "Zoya, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Especially not to people who hurt you." "I know," she said. "But I want to. Not for them. For me. I want to look into the eyes of everyone who judged me, who despised me, who treated me like I was less. And I want them to see what I've become." She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "And I want to go with you. If you want me at your side." That night, I would feel honored. And safe. Theron's heart kicked hard. The honor would be mine, he said, and it was the absolute truth. A smile spread across Zoya's face. Wide. Genuine. Beautiful. Then let's show Shadowmoor they underestimated the wrong she-wolf. The days before the ball passed in a blur of preparation and nervous anticipation. Theron arranged for the finest dress the seamstresses of Linares could create. When Zoya saw it for the first time, a deep emerald silk gown that matched perfectly with the golden tone of one of her eyes, with silver embroidery that reflected the other, she was speechless. It's perfect, she whispered, touching the fabric reverently. Just like you, Theron said before he could stop himself. Zoya blushed, but she didn't look away. Something was changing between them. Something that had been growing for months, but now felt on the verge of finally breaking the surface. The night before the journey, Theron found her in the garden, staring up at the stars. Nervous? He asked, coming closer. A little, Zoya admitted. But also, excited. Is that strange? No, Theron said. It's human. They fell silent for a moment, the night air cool against their skin. Theron, Zoya said eventually. Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For giving me a home. For teaching me that I'm more than what people told me I was. Zoya, you were always extraordinary, Theron said gently. I just helped you see it. She turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, her heterochromatic eyes shone like precious gems. Still. Thank you. And Theron knew in that moment that he was completely and irrevocably in love with her. But it wasn't the moment to say it. Not yet. There was something that needed to be settled first. The journey to Shadowmoor took 2 days by carriage through dense forests and open plains. Zoya was quiet for most of the way, staring out the window, clearly processing the return to the place where everything had begun. Theron didn't press her. He simply stayed present, offering his quiet company. The night before they arrived, when they stopped at an inn, Zoya finally spoke about it. She spoke softly as they ate dinner. It was at the grand annual gathering in Shadowmoor that everything happened. Theron waited, giving her space to continue if she wanted. I felt the bond, Zoya said, her voice distant as if she were reliving the memory. With the Alpha King. With Vorian. And for a single moment, I thought I would finally prove that I had worth. She gave a bitter laugh. But he looked at me and saw only flaws. My eyes. My poor clothes. And he didn't just reject me privately. In front of everyone, he humiliated me. Said everything I've hated hearing my whole life. Theron felt cold rage harden in his chest. He's a fool, Theron said simply. Zoya looked at him, surprised. Anyone who looks at you and doesn't see how extraordinary you are is a blind fool, Theron continued. And tomorrow, when we walk into that hall, you're going to show him exactly what he lost. Zoya smiled. Small but genuine. Thank you, she whispered. And Theron swore to himself that he would protect her no matter what happened. When they finally arrived at Shadowmoor's castle, a looming structure of dark stone that seemed to drink in the light around it, Zoya took several deep breaths before stepping out of the carriage. Ready? Theron asked, offering his hand. Zoya looked at his hand, then at the castle, then back at him. Ready, she confirmed, placing her hand in his. They stepped down from the carriage together, and immediately every head turned. Theron was striking in formal attire, a dark blue velvet tunic that brought out his eyes over a pristine white shirt, long blonde hair partly tied back with a worked leather band, a few strands left loose to frame his face. He radiated controlled power and the natural elegance of someone born to lead. But it was Zoya who stole everyone's breath. The emerald gown hugged the curves newly defined by training, highlighting the athletic yet feminine figure she had built over the past months. A cinched waist, shoulders strong yet delicate. Her dark hair was arranged in elegant waves that fell in a cascade over bare shoulders, with a few strands pinned back by delicately crafted silver clips. Her skin glowed healthy, flushed by the cool air of travel. And when she lifted her head, looking directly at everyone watching without a trace of shame or hesitation, her heterochromatic eyes caught the torchlight. One a blazing gold like molten metal, the other a bright silver like stars. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't shrinking. She was magnificent. Whispers burst like waves. Who is she? By the gods, I've never seen anyone so beautiful. Those eyes, they're different colors. Wait, she isn't. No, it can't be. She's the companion of Alpha King Theron of Linares. Theron offered his arm to Zoya with an elegant, respectful gesture, and she took it with a confident smile that didn't waver for a second. Together, they climbed the castle steps and entered the great hall. The hall was packed. Hundreds of wolves from the most important packs had gathered, all dressed in their finest silks, velvets, jewels glittering under 1,000 candles. All eager to see the chosen one of the powerful Alpha King Vorian. Theron and Zoya moved through the crowd, and it was impossible not to notice how people literally stopped mid-conversation to stare. Some with open admiration, others with barely hidden envy. Many simply shocked, wide-eyed. A perfect couple. Powerful. Beautiful. Magnetic. They're staring, Zoya murmured, keeping her smile in place. Let them stare, Theron murmured back, covering her hand with his on his arm. You deserve every look. Zoya squeezed his arm slightly in silent thanks. Following court protocol, they approached the host to greet him. It was custom for visiting alphas to present themselves to the king of the house. Vorian stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by advisors and nobles, beside a blonde she-wolf with an aristocratic air. Golden hair perfectly arranged, an expensive red dress, jewels at her throat. She held his arm with possessive familiarity, presumably the chosen one who would be presented. Vorian wore black formal attire that emphasized his imposing figure, a dark velvet tunic with silver detailing, black hair loose over broad shoulders. The posture of someone who commanded respect through presence alone. When he saw Theron approach, Vorian smiled, that political, calculating smile that never reached his dark eyes. Theron, he greeted, extending his hand with firmness. It is an honor to have the King of Linares at my ball. Your presence elevates our celebration. The honor is mine, Alpha King. Theron replied politely, gripping the offered hand with equal strength. That was when Vorian's eyes shifted to Theron's companion. And he froze. The hand holding Theron's went rigid. His breath caught. Dark eyes widened in absolute shock. Theron felt the exact moment Vorian recognized her. He saw the color drain from Vorian's face, saw his jaw slacken slightly before he forced control back into his expression. Around them, advisors and nobles noticed the strange reaction, glancing curiously between Vorian and the mysterious woman. Zoya, Vorian whispered, the name leaving his mouth as if he'd been stabbed in the stomach. The blonde she-wolf beside him frowned, confused and irritated by his reaction. Zoya met his gaze with no visible emotion. Her face was a mask of cool, distant politeness. Vorian, she replied with a light, formal nod, as if greeting a distant acquaintance. Congratulations on your chosen one. May your union be prosperous. Her voice was calm, controlled, indifferent. As if he were just another face in the crowd. And Theron saw it devastate Vorian in a way screams or tears never could. The blonde she-wolf looked between them, confusion sharpening into something else. Jealousy. Suspicion. Vorian looked at Zoya. Really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. And Theron could almost hear the thoughts racing through his head. This wasn't the timid, poorly dressed, shrinking she-wolf he had rejected months ago. This was a stunning woman. Confident. Radiant. Powerful in her own skin. The eyes he had called ridiculous and cursed now shone like precious jewels. The posture he had thought hunched and wrong was now straight and proud. The body he had dismissed was strong and graceful. And she stood beside another Alpha King, looking at Vorian as if he meant absolutely nothing. Something dark and dangerous flickered across Vorian's face. Jealousy. Regret. Possessiveness. All tangled together in an expression he fought to control. You were with him? Vorian asked, his voice harsher than he intended, his eyes sliding to Theron with something dangerously close to accusation. Zoya is my most valuable advisor, Theron said, his tone calm but edged with protective steel. And yes, She accompanies me tonight. I am very fortunate to have her company. The blonde she-wolf tightened her grip on Vorian's arm, displeased. Vorian, she said, her voice tense. But Vorian didn't answer, his gaze locked on Zoya as if no one else existed in the hall. His jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck going taut. I need to speak with you, he said, looking directly at Zoya, ignoring the woman beside him. In private. The blonde she-wolf released his arm sharply, her face flushing with humiliation. There's nothing to talk about, Zoya said simply, her voice firm. Enjoy your ball, Alpha King, she said, turning away with quiet grace. I'm certain your chosen one is waiting for your attention. It would be impolite to neglect her. The polite barb landed cleanly. The blonde she-wolf went even redder, tears of rage and humiliation shining in her eyes. Theron followed Zoya, feeling Vorian's stare burning into his back. Feeling too the shocked looks of dozens of nobles who had witnessed the exchange. When they were far enough away, Theron leaned slightly toward her. Are you all right? Zoya drew a deep breath, then let it out slowly. I am, she said, and she sounded surprised by her own truth. I thought seeing him again would break me all over. But I only feel empty. Like he's a stranger. She looked at Theron, and there was something like wonder in her eyes. I'm free, she whispered. Truly free. Theron smiled, covering her hand with his. Yes, he agreed. You are. Music began to play, an elegant waltz that echoed through the immense hall. Couples started to form on the dance floor, moving in intricate, graceful patterns. Across the room, Zoya could see Vorian being practically dragged onto the floor by the blonde she-wolf, who was trying to reassert her place at his side. But his eyes kept straying, searching through the crowd. Searching for her. Theron noticed too. He turned to Zoya and extended his hand with formal elegance. May I have this dance? Zoya hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Not from fear, but from a keen awareness of the moment. Dancing with Theron here, in this hall where months ago she had been shattered. It felt like closing a circle. It would be my pleasure, she said, placing her hand in his. Theron guided her onto the floor, and when he drew her close, one hand holding hers with gentle firmness, the other resting respectfully at her waist, Zoya felt the world around her begin to fade. They began to dance, moving in perfect sync, as if they had been dancing together for years. You dance well, Theron remarked, a smile tugging at his mouth. You taught me, remember, Zoya said with a small smile. Along with everything else. Defense, strategy, diplomacy. And dancing. Because you insisted that an advisor needs to know how to move in society. And I was right, Theron said, his blue eyes bright. Look at you now. Magnificent. Zoya blushed faintly, but she didn't look away. They danced in silence for a few moments, and Zoya was so focused on Theron, his eyes, his touch, his presence, that she almost forgot where she was until a voice interrupted her. May I steal the lady for a dance? They stopped and turned. Vorian was there, having abandoned his chosen one in the middle of the floor. His hand was extended toward Zoya, his expression tense and nearly pleading. Behind him, the blonde she-wolf stared with a mix of fury and humiliation, while nobles nearby whispered and pointed. Zoya looked at Vorian's hand as if it were something dangerous. Then at his face. And Theron saw the exact moment she decided to have a little fun. Oh, she said, her voice dripping with false concern and exaggerated innocence. I'd love to, truly. But unfortunately, I don't know how to dance. Vorian frowned, confused. But, you were dancing just now. With him. Was I? Zoya asked, blinking with theatrical innocence. How strange. I must have serious trouble with my feet then. They just don't work properly sometimes. Very inconvenient. Theron had to bite the inside of his cheek hard to keep from laughing out loud. A strangled sound of amusement escaped him anyway, which he tried to disguise as a cough. Around them, several nobles close enough to hear laughed discreetly behind fans and wine glasses. Vorian glanced between them, realizing he was being openly mocked, and his face flushed, part rage, part humiliation. Zoya, I need to talk to you. I need to get back to dancing, Zoya said brightly, turning back to Theron with a radiant smile. With my partner. Who interestingly doesn't make my feet develop mysterious problems. Funny how that works, isn't it? She pulled Theron back into the dance, leaving Vorian standing alone in the middle of the floor with hundreds of eyes watching his public rejection. The blonde she-wolf made a strangled sound and ran out of the hall in tears. Several of Vorian's advisors hurried over at once, trying to contain the damage and get him off the floor before things grew even worse. When they were far enough away, Theron finally let the laughter out. Low, genuine, full of delight. Trouble with your feet, he repeated, his blue eyes sparkling. Zoya, that was brilliant. Well, Zoya said, smiling mischievously in a way that made Theron's heart jump. It's technically true. My feet have a serious and inexplicable problem with dancing with men who publicly rejected me and called me shame. Must be some rare condition. Theron laughed louder, and a real, joyful sound made several nobles glance over with curious smiles. It was rare to see an alpha king so relaxed. When the music ended, Theron kept her hand in his. I need fresh air, he murmured. Come with me. Zoya nodded, and he guided her out of the hall through French doors that opened onto an outdoor terrace. The night air was cool and clean compared to the stifling heat of the hall. The full moon shone above them, bathing everything in ethereal silver light. They stood in silence for a moment, side by side at the stone balustrade, looking out over the moonlit gardens below. Zoya, Theron said eventually, turning to face her. She turned too, and in the moonlight, her heterochromatic eyes seemed to glow with their own light. Theron? He stepped closer, and the air between them charged with something unspoken but deeply felt. I can't pretend anymore, he said softly, his voice rough with contained emotion. Pretend what? That you're only my advisor, Theron said, lifting a hand to touch her face gently, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with reverence. That I don't think about you constantly. That my heart doesn't race every time you walk into a room. That I don't. He stopped, searching for the right words. Zoya was still, barely breathing, eyes fixed on his. That I don't ache for you, Theron finished. In every possible way. Zoya's heart hammered so hard she was sure he could hear it. Theron, she whispered, her own hand rising to cover his against her cheek. I can't pretend anymore either. Pretend what? He echoed her question, a small smile touching his mouth. That I don't wake up thinking of you. That I don't look for you in every room. That I don't. Her voice faltered for a moment. That I don't want you to see me as more than your advisor. I see you, Theron said, leaning closer, his forehead nearly brushing hers. I see you, Zoya. And what I see takes my breath away. The tension in the air became almost tangible. Theron, Zoya whispered again. And then, when he closed those last inches, when his lips finally met hers in a kiss that was gentle but full of unspoken promise, Zoya felt something inside her open. And for the first time since the rejection, since the pain, since everything, she felt loved. And when they parted, both breathing a little faster, both with shining eyes, Zoya knew something fundamental had changed between them. Something that couldn't be undone. Something she would never want undone. Theron rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, savoring the moment. And that was when they heard quick footsteps and an angry voice cutting through the night. Zoya! They pulled apart and turned. Vorian stood at the entrance to the terrace, his face twisted with rage, jealousy, and something that looked like desperation. And Zoya knew, looking at him, that the night was far from over. Vorian stood at the terrace entrance, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths as if he had been running. His hands were clenched into tight fists, his dark eyes locked on Zoya with an intensity that bordered on obsession. You, he said, his voice coming out rough. Get your hands off her. Theron didn't move. He simply remained beside Zoya, protective but not possessive. Watch your tone, Vorian, Theron said, his voice calm. Steel running beneath it. She is mine, Vorian roared, taking a step onto the terrace. The word echoed into the night. From the hall behind him, curious faces began to appear in doors and windows. Nobles whispering, pointing. Scandals spreading like wildfire. Zoya stepped forward, and Theron saw flames in her heterochromatic eyes. Yours, she repeated, her voice low but dangerous. Yours? You have no right over me. Vorian. You were my fated mate, Vorian said. And there was something broken in his voice now. Something that sounded like regret. The bond you tore apart, Zoya cut in, her voice rising. You rejected me publicly. You said I wasn't worthy. That I brought shame. Each word landed like a blade. From the hall, more people crowded in to watch. Among them, Theron saw the blonde she-wolf. Vorian's chosen one. Her face streaked with tears, being consoled by other noblewomen. I made a mistake, Vorian said, and for the first time his voice wavered. I see that now. Look at you. You are magnificent. I always was, Zoya said coldly. You were just too blind to see it. But now I see. Vorian took another step toward her. And I can't, my wolf never accepted the rejection. The bond may have been ripped apart by words, but your scent stayed in my soul. I can't. That's not my problem, Zoya said, and Theron felt pride flare in his chest at her strength. Zoya, please. Vorian pleaded now. And the powerful, feared Alpha King looked almost desperate. We can fix this. The temple says a king can try to reverse a rejection. It's rare, but possible. With blood and ritual. No, Zoya said simply. You won't even consider it? There's nothing to consider, Zoya replied, lifting her chin. You looked at me and decided I was worth nothing. You catalogued every flaw out loud so everyone could hear. You called me cursed. Her voice trembled slightly, but she stayed steady. And you know what I thought when I came here today? I thought it would hurt. That seeing you again, standing in the place where you tore me apart, would reopen all those wounds. She paused, and a small but genuine smile appeared on her face. But it didn't. Because I realized something important. There is no bond left for me. You're just a man who made a terrible mistake and now wants to undo it because it's convenient. Vorian went pale. It's not about convenience. Then what is it about? Zoya asked, pointing toward the hall where the blonde she-wolf was crying. About her? Your chosen one you abandoned in the middle of the dance floor? The woman you were about to present as your Luna? Murmurs exploded among the onlookers. The blonde she-wolf sobbed louder, covering her face with her hands. Theron saw Zoya beginning to shake, not with fear, but with accumulated rage. She was exposing too much, tearing open old wounds in front of all these strangers. He stepped forward, placing himself partly in front of her. Vorian, Theron said, still calm but with a clear warning. Let this go. You made your choice months ago. Live with the consequences. She was the first my wolf ever recognized, Vorian snarled, his eyes shining with something primal. Possessive. She was never yours, Theron replied, absolute certainty in his voice. You rejected her. It's done. It can be undone, Vorian said, his eyes narrowing. The blood ritual. It won't happen, Theron said. You can't stop me from claiming what is mine by right of bond. Vorian argued, his voice growing louder, more desperate. A bond you destroyed, Theron pointed out. But one that can be restored. Vorian nearly shouted. The old laws allow. I don't want it. Zoya shouted, silencing everyone. The terrace fell into absolute stillness. Even the whispering stopped. Zoya stepped forward out of Theron's partial shelter, facing Vorian directly. I don't want it, she repeated, each word punctuated. You can have all the old laws you want. You can have every ritual in the world. I will not take part. I refuse. You can't claim me because I'm not yours. I never was. And I never will be. The silence that followed was deep. Then Vorian did something that shocked everyone present. He dropped to his knees. the proud Alpha King of Shadowmoor on his knees in front of hundreds of witnesses. "Please," he whispered. "Zoya, please. I beg you. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. Just give me one chance." "Get up," Zoya said. And there was something like pity in her voice now. "Please, Vorian. Get up. It won't change anything." But Vorian didn't stand. And Theron saw the moment desperation turned into rage. Vorian surged to his feet, his face twisting. "Then let it be decided the old way," he declared, his voice echoing across the terrace and into the hall. "I, Vorian, Alpha King of Shadowmoor, challenge you, Theron of Linares, to an alpha duel." Gasps erupted among the onlookers. Theron went very still. "An alpha duel," he repeated. "Yes," Vorian said, regaining composure. "By the old laws. When two alphas contest rights over a mate, the duel decides. The moon collects its price. And it isn't always from the fighter." "Zoya is not property to be contested," Theron said, his voice dangerously low. "But the bond exists," Vorian insisted. "Even broken, it exists. And that gives me rights." "You have no rights," Theron cut in. "Then prove it," Vorian challenged. "In the duel. Or are you a coward?" The provocation was obvious, calculated. Theron looked at Zoya, who was pale, her eyes wide with worry. "Theron, no," she whispered. "You don't have to." "I know," Theron said gently. Then he turned back to Vorian, and when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. "I accept your challenge. But not because I believe I have rights over Zoya." He stepped closer to Vorian, blue eyes meeting dark. "I fight because you humiliated her. Because you broke her. Because you looked at something extraordinary and called it shame. And because here, in your own kingdom, in front of everyone who witnessed your cruelty." Theron paused, letting each word sink in. "You are going to hear this. She was always worthy. And I will defend that truth with my last breath." Murmurs of approval rose from some of the spectators. Even a few of Shadowmoor's nobles looked impressed. "Tomorrow at dawn," Vorian said. "In the duel arena." "So be it," Theron agreed. Then Vorian smiled, something cold and calculating. "And since you want to do this according to tradition, it will be in wolf form. Half-shifting permitted. And the crowd witnesses. That's how we do it in Shadowmoor." Theron didn't flinch. "I accept." An elderly Shadowmoor advisor stepped forward from the crowd. "As Elder of the Moon Temple," he said, his voice resonant, "I witness this challenge. An alpha duel will be held at dawn. In wolf form. Until submission or death." He paused, looking between Theron and Vorian. "But hear this well. When two kings fight over a she-wolf marked by the gods with split eyes, the moon takes its price. Blood will be spilled. And not everything that is lost can be recovered." A shiver ran through the crowd. Zoya felt something icy slide down her spine. Theron only nodded. "I am aware of the risks." "Then let the moon goddess decide," the elder said. At dawn, the crowd began to disperse slowly, frantic whispers filling the air. The night's scandal would be spoken of for months, perhaps years. Vorian cast one last look at Zoya, something between regret and possessiveness, before turning and leaving the terrace. When they were finally alone, Zoya turned to Theron, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You shouldn't have accepted," she said, her voice trembling. "He's brutal in combat. He never shows mercy. I've heard stories." "Hey," Theron said softly, taking her hands in his. "Look at me." Zoya lifted her eyes. "I'm not going to lose," Theron said with quiet conviction. "Not because I'm stronger. But because I have something he doesn't." "What?" "A real reason to fight," Theron said, squeezing her hands. "He fights for wounded pride. I fight for you." Tears finally spilled down Zoya's cheeks. "And if something happens to you?" she whispered. "Theron, I can't, if you get hurt because of me." "Nothing will happen," Theron promised. Trust me. I do trust you, Zoya said. I'm scared. Theron pulled her into his arms, holding her as she finally let the night's tension break into silent sobs. Everything will be all right, he murmured into her hair. I promise. The rest of the night passed in nervous tension. Theron was led to the guest quarters prepared for him, where he spent the hours mentally reviewing combat strategies. Zoya tried to sleep but couldn't. She lay awake, staring out the window at the moon, praying to God she wasn't even sure she believed in. When the first ray of light touched the horizon, servants began to move through the castle. The duel was about to begin. And the entire kingdom, both kingdoms, would watch. The duel arena was a circle of ancient stone in the back gardens of the castle, surrounded by stone stands, now packed with spectators. Hundreds of wolves had gathered. Nobles, servants, guards. All eager to witness the clash between two alpha kings. Zoya sat in an area reserved for important witnesses, flanked by Lunaris guards Theron had insisted remain with her. She was pale, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Across the arena, Vorian entered first. He wore only leather combat trousers, his bare torso showing defined muscles and scars from previous battles. His black hair was tied back. His dark eyes gleamed with determination and something darker. He looked every bit the brutal warrior the stories painted. The crowd roared in approval. He was their king after all. Then Theron entered. He too wore only combat trousers, his blonde hair partly tied back. But where Vorian looked aggressive, Theron looked serene. Calm. Like a deep lake before a storm. His blue eyes found Zoya in the stands, and he smiled, small but reassuring. It'll be all right, he seemed to say. Zoya tried to smile back, but couldn't. The fear was too strong. The elder stepped into the center of the arena, lifting both hands. Witnesses of the moon, he called. Today we bear witness to an alpha duel. By the old laws, this combat will decide honor and right. He looked to Theron. Theron of Lunaris, do you understand the terms? I understand, Theron said, his voice steady. He looked to Vorian. Vorian of Shadowmoor, do you understand the terms? I understand, Vorian replied. Then let the transformations begin, the elder declared, retreating quickly from the circle. And as the crowd collectively held its breath, both alphas began to change. Shifting was always brutal to watch. Bones breaking and reforming, muscles expanding, fur erupting. But these were alpha kings, and alphas shifted differently. Bigger. More powerful. More dangerous. The elder raised a hand. Let the duel begin. And hell broke loose. Vorian struck first. No warning, no hesitation, only pure explosive aggression. He crossed the arena in 3 massive leaps, jaws open, aiming for Theron's throat. Theron moved, not backward, but sideways. Fast, fluid, using speed against Vorian's brute force. The Black Wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air, momentum carrying him forward. Theron pivoted and countered, claws tearing into Vorian's flank before he darted away again. First blood. The crowd roared. Vorian recovered, snarling in fury. He charged again, this time more carefully, circling, hunting for an opening. Theron circled too, keeping distance. Blue eyes fixed on every movement. He's stronger, Theron knew. Heavier. More brutal. But I'm faster. More strategic. Vorian lunged again, feinting left before attacking right. Theron saw the feint, but not fast enough. Huge teeth clamped down on his shoulder, punching deep. Pain exploded through him. The crowd screamed, half in approval, half in horror. Zoya made a strangled cry, her hands flying up to cover her mouth. Theron ignored the pain. He twisted, using Vorian's weight against him, and managed to sink his own fangs into the Black Wolf's ear. Vorian yelped and released, stumbling back. Blood streamed from both of them now. Theron's shoulder throbbed with sharp agony. Vorian's ear hung at a wrong angle. They separated, circling again, both reassessing. He's good, Theron admitted. Better than I expected. But Theron had something Vorian didn't. Purpose. He flicked a glance up to the stands, finding Zoya. She was standing now, tears on her cheeks, but her eyes locked on him. And Theron remembered why he was here. Vorian attacked again, but this time Theron was ready. He ducked beneath the strike, sliding under Vorian's massive body and raked with his hind claws as he passed, a move he had taught Zoya months ago during training. Vorian roared in pain as claws opened deep cuts across his belly. He spun, furious now, abandoning all strategy for pure rage. And that was his downfall. Rage made you predictable. Vorian charged wildly again and again, relying on brute force. Theron dodged, blocked, and countered with surgical precision. A cut here, a bite there, never staying still long enough for Vorian to land a clean hit. The fight dragged on. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Both bled from multiple wounds. Both panted hard. But Theron had endurance. Years of disciplined training. Strategy over brute strength. Vorian began to slow. His attacks grew sluggish, less coordinated. And then Theron saw the opening. Vorian lunged again, tired, careless. Theron waited until the last possible second, then moved, not to the side, but straight forward, catching Vorian off guard. He slid beneath the gaping jaws and surged upward, his own jaws locking around Vorian's throat. Not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to force submission. Vorian struggled, but Theron had perfect position. He tightened, fangs pressing into skin, finding the jugular. A clear message. I can end this now if I want. Vorian stopped fighting. For long seconds, they held like that. The crowd in absolute silence. Then, slowly, Vorian bared his throat. The universal sign of submission among wolves. Theron released and stepped back. The elder entered the arena, raising his hands. Submission, he declared. The duel is over. Theron of Lunaris is victorious. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half protesting, everyone stunned. Theron shifted back into human form, his body slick with blood and wounds, but still standing. Vorian shifted too, dropping to his knees, panting, defeated. Theron looked at him for a long moment. You are strong, Theron said, his voice rough. But strength isn't everything. He turned toward the stands where Zoya was already running down, guards trying to follow. Then his legs gave out. Theron dropped to his knees as exhaustion and blood loss finally caught up with him. Zoya reached him, falling to her knees beside him, hands going immediately to his injuries. Theron, she cried. There's so much blood. I'm fine, he managed. Though everything ached, it was worth it. The healer rushed in with assistance immediately, starting to treat Theron's wounds. He'll be all right, she assured Zoya. Nothing fatal. But he needs rest. Zoya nodded, never letting go of Theron's hand. Across the arena, Vorian was still on his knees, watching. Watching Theron and Zoya together. Watching the way she looked at him. The way he looked at her. And finally, Vorian understood. He hadn't just lost the duel. He had lost her in every possible way. The elder approached Vorian, speaking low. The duel is decided. You can no longer claim her. Vorian nodded slowly, something breaking in his chest. I know. He looked at Zoya one last time, memorizing her, heterochromatic eyes shining with tears, her beautiful face bent over Theron with obvious worry. Her hand holding his as if she would never let go. She truly loves him, Vorian realized. Then Vorian turned and left the arena, sparse applause following him. His kingdom had witnessed his defeat. His humiliation. Theron was carried to the guest quarters where the healer worked for hours cleaning wounds, stitching deep cuts, wrapping bruised ribs. Zoya stayed at his side the entire time, holding his hand, refusing to leave even when the healer suggested it. When the work finally ended, Theron was bandaged and pale, but his blue eyes still shone when he looked at her. You should rest, the healer said. The body needs time to heal. I will rest, Theron promised. But first, he looked at Zoya. May I have a moment alone with her? The healer smiled faintly. Of course. But don't overexert yourself. Alpha King. When they were alone, Zoya finally let out a trembling breath. She spoke, tears threatening to fall. When I saw those jaws close on you. Sorry I scared you, Theron said softly. Theron gently pulled her closer, ignoring the pain in his wounds. Zoya, I love you, he said simply. Tears slid down Zoya's face. I'm not the bond fate chose for you, Theron continued. But I choose you. I want you. Every day, Theron, Zoya whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. And I know you've been through so much, Theron said. That you were hurt in ways I'll never fully understand. So I don't expect you to feel the same. But I needed you to know. I love you, Zoya. For a moment, Zoya only stared at him, tears spilling freely. Then she leaned in and kissed him. Gentle, careful of his injuries, but full of emotion. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. And I love you too, she said at last. Zoya, Theron whispered, his heart bursting with happiness. I choose you, Zoya said. Every day. Forever. If you'll have me. If I'll have you? Theron laughed, then hissed as the motion tugged his ribs. Zoya, you're everything I ever wanted. But never knew I needed. They stayed like that for a long time. Foreheads together, simply existing in each other's space. So, Zoya said eventually. What do we do now? Now? Theron smiled. Now, when my wounds heal, I properly ask if you'd accept being my Luna. Zoya laughed, the sound light and happy. And when they kissed again, it was with the certainty that they had found something no forced bond could ever match. True love. Built on respect, admiration, choice, and time. The kind of love that would last forever. 2 years later, the kingdom of Lunaris was celebrating. Theron and Zoya were marking their second anniversary as King and Luna, and the kingdom had never been more prosperous. Under their shared leadership, Lunaris became known not only for military strength, but for justice, compassion, and intelligent diplomacy. Zoya, with her heterochromatic eyes, once seen as a curse, was now admired across neighboring kingdoms as the wisest and kindest Luna of the generation. Children born with different traits were now celebrated, not hidden. And the love between King and Luna became legend. Not a love forced by destiny, but a love freely chosen. On a quiet afternoon, Theron and Zoya walked through the castle gardens hand in hand. Have you heard news from Shadowmoor? Zoya asked. Theron nodded. Vorian finally married. They say it's a political partnership, but respectful. I hope he finds happiness, Zoya said. And she meant it. The anger had faded long ago. Only peaceful indifference remained. You're incredible. You know that? Theron said, stopping to look at her. Why? For having compassion. Even for the one who hurt you. Zoya smiled. He hurt me, yes. But that pain led me to you. So, in a way, I'm grateful. Theron pulled her into his arms. I love you, he said, as he said every day. My extraordinary Luna. And I love you, Zoya replied, as she replied every day. My king who taught me how to fly. And when they kissed beneath the afternoon sun, surrounded by flowers and peace, they both knew they had found something rare. A love not given by destiny, but built with choice, respect, and time. The kind of love worth every battle. You have just listened to a tale from the Moonlight Maid's library. If Zoya and King Theron's victory over a cruel destiny touched your heart, please leave a like and share this story with someone who needs to know their worth. And I'm curious, tell me in the comments below, if you were in Zoya's shoes, would you have given your fated mate Vorian a second chance, or was she right to choose the king who loved her by choice? To uncover more stories of rejected mates, alpha duels, and true love, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. The library is always open for you. Until the next chapter, sweet dreams.